I'm David Hepworth. Thanks for clicking this Word in Your Ear podcast, videocast thing for which there is no name. Mark Ellen and I have been creating in this line since 2007. And if any of it has met with your approval, then please click to subscribe because it helps. Leave a comment because we like to hear from you, and maybe even consider becoming a Patreon supporter because then, well, you'll be one of us. Visit patreon.com/wordinyourear for details.
Welcome to another edition. Now, as you may know, the Oscar-winning film director and magnificently successful actor Malcolm Tucker, Doctor Who, has finally seen sense and returned to making records, which he started doing in his punk band in Glasgow in the late 70s. Peter Capaldi, it's terrific to see you. How are you doing? All right?
To be here. I'm very, very happy to be here, yes.
Very good, very good. Well, look, we're going to get on to the record you've made in a moment, but can we take you back to, well, maybe even the first records you bought? Can you remember the first record you bought?
First record I bought, yeah. I can remember that quite distinctly because I'm always kind of behind the curve and I was quite late to music.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I just released my first album at the age of 63, so that's quite late. But everybody else, it seemed, at school was very cool and very into people had Pink Floyd albums under their arm or Led Zeppelin albums under their arm, and I was a bit frightened to join that group. I felt quite intimidated. School is really the place where all this starts, and I can remember someone that played Bowie's Time with that line about, pleasuring yourself.
Oh, yes, of course.
Which we were all scandalized, delighted and thrilled by that whole thing. But I didn't get into Bowie until much later. And so I've tried to find something that I quite liked, but that was quite safe, and that was Slade. So the very first single I bought was Ma Mama, We're All Crazy Now.
I loved them too.
Now, can you spell it in the way that Slade spelt it?
Slade spelling test.
Yeah. Crazy. I think it's the crazy is the only word that's different. I think that's.
I think you might be right, but I thought that Weir is spelled WEER.
Oh, you might be.
I think it is.
I think it is.
Yeah,
I know. It's like the spelling of goodbye and goodbye to Jane. I mean, it's just brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's absolutely fantastic kind of rock and roll, and it's sort of quite. It's a bit terrifying and a bit safe at the same time.
Right.
So I loved them. And also,
did you ever see them?
No. But it also has these mysterious lines. I don't drink my whiskey, but still do. I've had enough to fill a Penteal's left shoe. I don't know what Penteal's left shoe is, but hopefully Noddy Holder does. And there's like a 7-note guitar solo in it. There's a tiny little 7-note kind of brief phrase, which is very exciting. So I loved it. That was the first single I bought. Yeah.
So first time on stage, was it acting or playing music?
I think the first time on stage was acting, yeah. Because I'm sort of interested. I was interested as a kid, was just interested in a whole pile of things. And music was part of that, but I was also interested I basically wanted to be on the telly. That was my ambition. I mean, other actors say, they want to do Shakespeare. And actually, they're actually lying, really, because they just want to be on the telly as well. So that's what I wanted to do.
What did you want to be on the telly? Who did you want to be
Anybody.
on the right.
Doctor Who, obviously.
Right.
And that worked. Or Monty Python, could have been in Monty Python. Or John Hurt. I loved John Hurt. I saw him in I, Claudius and thought he was the coolest actor I'd ever seen, and he just had a quality about him he was a little bit rock and roll, actually. Even though he could do Shakespeare and he idolized Paul Scofield and all of that, there was quite a kind of wasted quality about him.
Yes, slightly dissipated, wasn't it?
That's right. You could have easily been hanging around with the Stones or something like that.
So what's the difference? So you had the experience as a teenager going on stage, being in plays, but also experience in being in bands. What's the kind of difference in terms of
the difference
giving the impression to the audience and so
forth? The difference is that you, in a band, well, that's my experience, and what I loved about it was you sort of got to, you got to sort of live what you thought was a rock and roll lifestyle. And also you were able to try to create your own world. You could, if you wrote songs and had a particular sound, try to create your own vibe that hopefully the audience would get into. Not in our case, but that it was a very, very creative thing. At that time, I went to art school in 1976, so we all arrived at art school dressed as Neil Young, with cheese shirts on and denims, and then the punk thing happened. So we all came back in the winter term with leather trousers. So
everybody.
That's good. Describe what how you reappeared from that. I mean, what were you wearing?
I had sort of, we didn't have very much money. And we didn't have very much. We were in Glasgow, so we didn't have access to all these, to the King's Road and all of the things that we knew were going on there. So there were people who literally had bin bags for a while, with safety pins in them. But I managed to get a pair of sort of PVC trousers, and some kind of vintage jacket, and I had a strange kind of. I thought it was a kind of Ziggy haircut, but it was more a kind of mullet. It was, and that's how it turned out, because people weren't kind of versed in doing all that hairstyle stuff. So I was kind of, and black, of course, was great. As soon as you realized you could get into wear black coats and black trousers, and I was very proud. I had a very bright red pair of brothel creepers, or crepe shoes, as they were more gently called. But they were very exciting. And also it was a great time, because a lot of the stuff that's around now was sort of being created. I mean, there were no goths, but there were proto-goths. There was an exploration of darkness and kind of fun in that direction. In fact, we got rather obsessed with the Cramps, who were a band, who were an American band, who were kind of sort of voodoo swamp monsters kind of lot.
I loved them. Poison Ivy. They were great.
Lux Interior.
Lux Interior.
Was the name of the lead singer. And we went to see them.
Brian Gregory. Well, do you remember Brian Gregory, the original bass player, who was this sort of cadaverous-looking creature with a weird
hair? They didn't have a drummer, did they? They had drummer problems, like Spinal Tap. I can't remember them having a drummer.
I think they did, but I think they were changing drummers, weren't they?
But we went to see them in Edinburgh. I remember that was really. It was quite to go from Glasgow to Edinburgh. It's quite a trip if you're from. It's only like an hour away, but it's a world away.
Yeah.
And we went to see them in Edinburgh, and I can remember the venue was the Lux Interior was so tall that his head was like just inches away from the roof, and they were so loud and wild that they had to bring the gig to a close. And the person who got that job was a kind of janitor, basically, who had to get up on stage and face off with Lux Interior. But it was great. I mean, it was a great time. And at that time in Glasgow, there were just so many bands. The Simple Minds had kind of forged the way ahead and shown that you could come from a council estate and do strange post-glam.
So did you see them in the very early days when Jim had his kind of Shakespearean haircut?
Yeah, I don't know what that was or where he got that from. And I did. I saw them. There used to be a bar called the Mars Bar. Gone, which was about the size of this room. And I guess I was sort of slightly lost. I didn't kind of know musically who I was or where I was going. And I kept going to gigs and getting it wrong and leaving and stuff like that. And then I went to see them and I thought, oh, wow, this is it. This is strange and powerful. And they were very imaginative. I guess they were. That was just as the first album was coming out, and it was a more kind of post-glam kind of thing as opposed to a punky thing. But they were amazing, and also to see them up close, and also meet some of I became great friends with David and Jane Henderson, who were the lighting and sound engineers respectively. And they themselves were very, very glamorous people, some of the most glamorous people I'd seen walking down the street in Glasgow. So hanging around with them was great. I loved it.
It was Simple Minds that made you think it was possible then?
Yeah. But also,
why that you could write your own stuff, or you could get on stage and perform, or what was it about them?
Well, they spoke like us.
Yeah,
they came from sort of fairly, ordinary backgrounds, and they were there in our city, and you could see in that little bar, you could see that someone had to shunt the amps in, and someone had to assemble the drum kit, and they bought the guitars from the music shops that we knew. They were local, I guess, and when you see a local band, you think, wow, and then they get signed up and they become huge, and that's all amazing. But it was just exciting. The musicianship did not intimidate you.
Yeah.
It was fairly...
all seemed doable. Yeah.
It all seemed doable. And also it was just the ethos of the time. When punk came along, and as I say, I was at art school then, the whole thing was have a go.
So how did you come together? Was it the Dreamboys?
The worst name ever for a band.
No. There's far worse names than Dream.
Terrible names.
So, basically we thought we were being rather clever and Kafka-esque.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I actually found this is an old poster.
Oh, very good.
Oh, good, yes. Good typography.
But you can see the strange kind of little culled from the Outer Limits faces and strange.
Yeah.
Like Diamond Dogs-esque background. We thought we were very dark and strange.
How did you come together? Did you spot each other in the lunch queue or anything?
We were all just at art school, so we were all just friends at art school, and we just thought,
right.
do all this. But and our first gig was just there they used to have a disco, on a Friday night, and we just set up our gear in the corner of the disco hall. And they stopped the music for a while, and we played a gig. I can't remember exactly what we played, other than we played Heartbreak Hotel. Quite why we chose to play Heartbreak Hotel, I don't know. But it was great. I loved it, and there were so many bands in Glasgow, and you could just run around, with a little cassette of your music and take it to a bar.
Why were there? It's just interesting, was it? Because there was Altered Images, there's Skids, there were Rosillos, Orange Juice, Joseph K. There was so much going on. Well, later it was Blue Nile.
Yeah.
Strawberry Switchblade.
I think it's just, and you would see all those people in the street and not realize, you think they must be in a band. I mean, Strawberry Switchblade you would see.
Well, you see, that's where I was getting at, because people will spot each other, don't they, long before they realize they're in bands. Like John Lennon and Paul McCartney spotted each other long before they knew.
Yeah.
But I used to go to, there would be live music was kind of, you would go to a pub. We were all about 18 or 19. And people would be playing, guys with denims would be playing Thin Lizzy, which was fantastic.
Yes.
Thin Lizzy. But gradually you would see just at the back, people with dyed hair, plastic trousers, little groups of them starting to appear. And then you start to say hello to each other. And it just sort of grew that way. But I think a lot of it, I think Manchester and Newcastle and Belfast, Liverpool and Glasgow, they all have a kind of, they punch above their weight artistically. And I'm not quite why that is. There's something about the survival of these romantic ideals that music embraces in that kind of industrial and quite tough sort of environment that forges quite strong, passionate links with music and with creativity generally. I think.
So, was your ambition at the time to be on the cover of the NME and have a John Peel session?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. Yes, and I think we were the only band in Glasgow that never got a John Peel.
I'm gonna say, did you?
For which I remain
a shame.
To this day, although he did play our single a couple of times, which was that.
Can you remember what he said? Did you hear him play it?
Nothing.
He said nothing.
He introduced us. He didn't have a little acid remark, and of course, whenever you get played on drum, you're waiting for the undertones experience. You're expecting to.
Everything's going to change.
He's going to play it twice and say, this has changed my life.
But he played it. It was very sweet.
Well, that was one from the Dreamboys. And
Exactly
more
that.
from Aztec Camera later. That's right.
That's fine. I think
Forgotten.
the last record on the show, but he did play it, and he was I actually met him eventually. He was very sweet, but no, it seemed that everybody was getting signed up and getting sessions, but not us. We found it hard, but it was wonderful. I mean, it was
Craig Ferguson was the drummer.
yeah.
So this is an extraordinary thing. Is it?
Yeah.
So, well, there are 4 people in the group or something like that. 2 of them end up being very famous.
Yeah, not for playing music.
But it's even more extraordinary, isn't it, really?
Well, that was funny because we always had trouble with drummers, like Spinal Tap. We could never get a drummer. Everybody had trouble with drummers, trying to find a good drummer. I remember we did a gig at this place called the Rock Garden, which is still there, which was but it was downstairs.
In London, you mean?
This was in Glasgow.
Oh, I see.
And this is a story about Craig. And someone sat in for us on drums. And during the gig, I said, if anybody knows anyone who plays drums, would they get in touch with us? Send a postcard to this address. And because we're looking for a drummer. And Craig was at the gig. And afterwards, after the gig, he came up to me and said, I can play the drums. Can I join? And I said rather grandly that we'll have to audition you.
We're not that desperate.
Like we knew what we were talking about. And we did. And he came and did an audition, and he was terrible, but we really liked him. And then we went to the pub, and then we went back to the rehearsal room, and he was fabulous.
Straight away.
We thought, he's great. But what made me laugh about Craig was he came from, I love this kind of tribalism and kind of, he came from a place called Cumbernauld, which was a new town, which was when they demolished the tenements, and all the people would go off and live in this new concrete paradise that had been built. And we were clearly from Glasgow, but he thought being in a Glasgow band was a step up from being a band. He thought that was genuinely, he was joining a metropolitan elite. Glasgow band.
So you were the lyricist for the Dreamboys, weren't you?
Oh yeah. Well, and Roddy, Roddy Murray, who was also the guitar, he wrote a lot of songs as well. I wasn't the only one writing, But my problem was really, I didn't really. That was our sort of, I think, where we fell down was we didn't work hard enough on that part of things, because obviously that's what other bands, the Simple Minds were working all the time on writing, trying to find what it was they did. I think we enjoyed being on stage too much.
Right. You like the showing off part of it.
That's exactly it. On the way to being on the telly. Yeah.
Did you have a kind of artistic concept though when it came down to writing?
Yeah, we had a sort of we used to call it bizarro pulp. It was a kind of sort of mashing together of we liked horror movies and rock and roll, but we couldn't figure out whether we wanted to be Talking Heads or the Cramps.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was somewhere we loved that kind of art house thing. Because we were an art school band, always pursued that side of things, but we also liked the idea of putting on makeup and stomping around and doing guitar solos.
Bizarro Pulp might have been a better name for the band than the Dreamboys.
I think it would have been, undoubtedly. But I must tell you a story as we're on this, because this has haunted me for years, and I have to get it off my chest. You have to understand at that time, we just played bars, basically. Occasionally we would get Altered Images would be very kind, and occasionally they would give us a support slot, which was fabulous. And they took us on tour with them, which was fabulous. But largely we were just, living from hand to mouth, whatever gig we could get. And one occasion we got a gig in Grangemouth, which is a place sort of, it's northeast of Glasgow. It's on the Firth of Forth. And we were very excited because it was essentially a headline gig, which we'd never had before. So we had to hire a van, which was an expense for us because we didn't have access to a van. And we got our little entourage all packed in the back of the van and our amplifiers and whatever, and went to Grangemouth. It's only like 23 miles away, but again, it was a world away, and it was basically arriving there was like it's like the start of Blade Runner, because it's like an oil refinery, and it's got all these plumes of smoke and blah blah. But we found there was this little hotel there, I think called the Hotel International, I think, and we played in the corner of the function suite there was no stage, it was just a corner, and we got all of our stuff in there. And all the local Grangemouth punks came out to see us. So that's about 12 people, really, But for us, it was really exciting because it was a headline gig. And we got a support band. So the support band played, and then we did our gig. And it was great. And all the locals were giving, and there was one girl in particular who was giving it this wonderful kind of sort of haunting, hypnotic kind of dancing right in front of me. And it was a great gig, although we lost power twice, and we just, all those kind of disasters that befell us. But at the end of the gig, I went to get our our money, and the promoter, or the guy who owned the hotel, or the guy who was running the gig, whatever, said there wasn't really enough. There was only like about 12 quid or something, because we hadn't made enough at the door. So it was barely going to cover the costs for the van. So that was a bit worrying. But what was really embarrassing was we had the support band, and we had promised to pay them. And we didn't have enough money to pay them and pay the van. So, and this is very unusual. This is not the kind of person I am at all. So this is why this has always haunted me. It was decided in a quick conversation, well, you talk to them, we'll get the gear in the van, and we'll get the engine running, and then just say, I'm going off to get your money, and jump in the van, and we'll go home. And that's what we did. So I chatted to the support band and all that, and we talked about rock and roll and things we like and stuff like that. And I said, oh, excuse me, I've got to go. One of the guys, I'll go and get the money now. And off we went. And of course, the support band was the Cocteau Twins, who the gods of rock and roll later, decided that they would be successful and all of that, and we would not be. And I've always felt guilty about that.
Have you ever seen them since?
No, I've never seen them, and I've never had that conversation. But I would give them the 3 quid.
Give them the 3 quid.
The 7 quid to watch.
That's fantastic. But again, the advantage there is I can't think of a less aggressive group than the Cocteau Twins. They're hardly going to come looking for you.
You still didn't want to noise them up. It was
no, absolutely.
It was Grangemouth. You never know.
I think it sounds like a scene in a Bill Forsyth movie. That does, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's. But I mean, I truly have been guilty about that for 40 years.
So when you headed into acting, did you think, well, that's music done for me?
I didn't sort of. That happened quite. I mean, they're all sort of interconnected. I mean, how that happened was we were supporting Altered Images, and Claire, the singer of Altered Images, had been in Gregory's Girl, which Bill Forsyth had directed, and Bill was at a gig, and we happened to be there, and we played, and I met him there, and subsequently he cast me in this film Local Hero, which but I mean, that was a very my world was a world of trying to get gigs and running away from support bands and having lager and curries. So to be taken into this world of proper filmmaking was quite a shock. So I expected to go back. I mean, when you see the film, you can't. If you look very closely, you'll see I've got an earring which they've had to remove for the part that I played. But there's a little hole there. I thought I would go back. I guess I thought I would help the band. But
that's interesting because you weren't sitting there thinking I've got a burning ambition to be an actor. You had a burning ambition to be a musician, really. And you just tried this and thought, well, I quite like it.
Well, I had a burning ambition to be on the telly.
Just to be on the telly. On the telly is true. Yeah.
No, I did want to be a musician, and I did want to be an actor. I think what happened, I think we get put into all these little boxes. There's so many actors I know who are great musicians, and musicians I know who are great performers. I don't think there's this. I think I was just part of a creative scene. I liked doing creative things, and I thought the film would help the band. I thought the film would be great fun and an exciting thing to do. I didn't really think that it was going to become a career, but I also felt it was fate was in some way saying to me, "This is such an incredible break. This is such an enormous piece of luck that you have suddenly, gone from hanging around pubs in Glasgow to being in a film with Burt Lancaster. Fate must be telling you something."
And presumably that's something you've realised more and more as time's gone on.
Yeah, but also because life is so full of luck. I mean, it's such good. I've had such good fortune, and a lot of the times I haven't done anything to make that good fortune come my way. I mean, I guess one could say, well, we were out in the world in a band presenting ourselves, but I think it was the kind of death knell for the band, really, because it was too powerful an elixir, this thing of being in front of the camera and being part of that world. And I couldn't really keep the two things going because the other thing, the band was just not, we weren't getting the gigs. You can't go, we'd been together for like 5 or 6 years.
Right. Oh, right.
And there's a time and finally, when you haven't been signed and you can't get any pure sessions.
That's nearly as long as the Beatles, though.
On which note, we must ask you, actually, because you played very early on in your career. It's particularly fascinating for me and Dave. You played John Lennon. I think it was the
John Paul, George, Ringo and Burt.
John Paul, George, Ringo and Burt, and you played George Harrison in a NBC series called John and Yoko. So you played John and George. So what was required for those roles?
A not very good Scouse accent, really, was what I had. The first one was, in fact, it was the first job I ever did in London. Was there was a great play called John Paul, George, Ringo and Burt, written by Russell, which was the story of the Beatles told on stage in that very kind of agit-prop way of the theatre had in those days, which seems to have vanished. The idea now that you'd get, somebody who'd been a hairdresser in Liverpool who became a world-famous writer of playwright Willie Russell, because they were supported by a local theatre. That's just vanished now. But he wrote he wrote Blood Brothers, which is another. But he wrote, this is one of his early shows, which is a kind of, I guess now you would call it a jukebox musical, but it wasn't. It was cleverer than that. And so they were just looking for people. So it was the story of the Beatles, and the original cast had been, I think Anthony Sher was in it. I think that's Yossa Hughes. What was it? Bernard
Hill. Yeah.
Bernard Hill played John Lennon originally. Great cast, but they were doing it in London, and they needed people basically who could play guitars.
All right.
So they just auditioned a whole pile of people who could play guitar. And I auditioned. It could have been for John or George or whatever, but they said John, and I was miscast. I didn't have John's kind of sharpness or any of that. But it was a great experience, and you got to dress up, and with all the gear, and also got to meet Stephen Lewis, who was Blakey from On the Buses. because in that kind of agit-prop kind of theatre way, we portrayed the Beatles in Hamburg with the guy who was running them was Hitler, was literally Hitler, but played by Blakey from On the Bus. So, it's a great idea, isn't it?
There's another scene in your Bill Forsyth film.
It really was. I was on stage every night with the real Blakey from On the Bus.
Playing Hitler.
Yeah.
Playing Hitler, managing the Beatles. This is terrific.
Yeah. And then you were George in what was the?
George. That was so great. That was one of my most fun jobs ever. It was called Imagine. Now there's quite a story to this. This was called Imagine John and Yoko, which was a kind of rather earnest. The Americans used to do movies of the week. So this was a big movie of the week. And it was the story of John and Yoko. And obviously they were looking for people who could play guitar, blah, blah, blah. So I went, and I could play guitar a little bit. So I got cast as George. But John had been, it was really strange. The guy who they cast as John was using a stage name, and it was discovered that his real name was Mark Chapman.
Oh, right.
Which was really...
That's unsettling.
Yeah. And the poor guy, Yoko, who had some kind of editorial control on it, she thought that was very bad karma. So the guy was removed, and Mark McGann, who was great, and played John. But the great thing about playing, they got a guy in who taught me how to play the guitar solo from Let It Be and all that. Mm-hmm. And B, you got to dress up as the Beatles in all these different eras. And the first thing we did was supposed to be Shea Stadium, but it was really Wembley Arena, which actually was quite a small. I don't know why they call it an arena, because it's not. It was just quite a small kind of function suite. And we got to wear the little suits and all that. We all came running on it. Obviously, there's no crowd there, but we all came running on the sound of a huge crowd. But they cast the Beatles rather well, but they hadn't cast them well height-wise. So Ringo kind of towered over all. That looked wrong, but you'd go through it. I mean, it was in the days when, there was no digital filmmaking then. We did this scene that was supposed to be with the Maharishi in India, but it was like a field in Slough, and they had a glass painting, when they had. And they painted Kilimanjaro on this glass painting. We all had to sit around. And I'd say, and there'd be an extra next to me, and I'd say, "Who are you?" And they'd say, "Me O'Farrell." I'm Donovan. And it was just a laugh. And I had the worst. I had the terrible George.
Oh, I've seen clips of it. You've got a George, and all you have to do really is be very kind of laconic and just George-like. And
I'm terrible in it. But we're all pretty terrible. But can you imagine getting to dress up as the Beatles and to play some of their songs? It was just such a laugh.
I'm getting paid for this. It's fantastic.
Fantastic. I loved it. But
you carried on. You've continued to play music while making films. You kind of amuse yourself on sets by. Do you feel downtime by?
No, not really. I mean, I wasn't really like that. I mean, what happened was I thought of, I just distanced myself from performing music. And I never had the confidence, strangely enough. I was never the guy at the party with a guitar or the guy who was, and do sing songs and stuff like that. I was never like that. I obviously listened to music and enjoyed it, but just stopped kind of having any kind of performing element or creative element in it. And funnily enough, I think it was actually when I was doing Doctor Who, I think I would find myself with a lot of, it was quite labor intensive, and I was on my own a lot, and in Cardiff and away from my family. And I thought, well, I'll get the old electric guitar out again. And so I'd spend an hour at night.
So it was a long time since you'd played it, really. You're blowing the dust off it kind of thing. That's quite unusual, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it was taking it seriously. That's right. What I'd always sort of played, but never really took it that seriously. But then I started to say, well, let's look at this and see. Because as you get older as well, you look for some other creative expression, I guess. And that sort of led to, I met my friend Dr. Robert from the Blow Monkeys, who were a big band. And he just always encouraged me. He was the guy at the party with the guitar. Right. He can play anything. He's very, very gifted, great singer, knows the lyrics to everything, knows the chords to everything, a real musician. I mean, I'm very anxious that people understand that I don't consider myself, just because I've done a couple of albums that I've put out on Spotify, whatever, in the same world as people who have given their life to music. Because as you well know, there are so many ups and downs with that. It's like a calling. You have to live through it all, and as I have with my acting. I mean, I kind of think, what I do is sort of all of that. That's but I have become a professional actor, and I've had good years and bad years, and you hang on in there, and it forges you in a certain way. So the musicians who I know are they've been through the fire,
Yeah.
and they're still here, and I haven't had that experience, so I don't pretend that I'm in any way in the same level as them, other than having a creative spark. But Robert sort of was involved in a small label, and he said to me, they used to do these albums, and they'd get all these musicians together, and I came to visit him one day when he was doing this, and he said, why don't you write a song? I said, what? He said, yeah, write a song. I said, what? No. He said, yeah. I said, okay, I'll come back tomorrow. Well, this is really exciting. So I sort of put some chords, wrote a song, and brought it in, and they played it. Because they're musicians, they played it and they recorded it in a morning. And I thought, wow, this is, and it sounded okay. And I thought, I got to do more of this.
But also, that's a really good discipline, isn't it? Because you're not sitting around waiting for the muse to visit you.
No.
You're saying, I've got to write a song, and I write a song on this subject now.
And it was so much fun. I thought, I've got to do more of this. So I went off I did a film called The Suicide Squad in America, and the way those things work out. I mean, I was there for 4 months in Atlanta. I could have shot my part in 3 weeks, but you do 2 days this week and then a day next week. So I had all this downtime there. So I thought, I'm going to write songs. That's what I'm going to do. So I bought a really cheap guitar and just gave myself this task that every day I would write at least one song, because I'd read somewhere that you got to write 100 songs before you get one good one.
I'd never heard that line before. It's a good line. It's a good line.
I haven't written 100.
It's like the Beatles. It's like the 10,000 hours theory, isn't it? The Beatles in Hamburg.
Yeah. And it's also being able to have the kind of discipline to say, I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to be self-critical about it.
Right.
But I've got to finish every song.
Right, really? You get to the end, yeah?
Oh, you've got to. That was my rule, was that it had to be beginning, middle, and end.
Right.
So
did you think, I'm going to write a song on this particular subject? How did you start that process?
I said, I'll write a kind of Roy Orbison kind of thing now. Or I'll write a sad song. Or I'll write a kind of Talking Headsy thing now.
Have you got a song called Bin Night?
I have got a song called Bin Night, yeah.
And tell us how that came to be.
Bin Night. Bin Night came about because I became a grandfather.
Oh, there you go.
And found this well of love that I didn't realize that could exist for my grandson. And I had a baby in my arms again. And I didn't even realize that I had missed that, or that had been such a huge part of my life. But, and there was chaos, because babies bring all this chaos. But that also sort of plugged into a kind of sense of chaos about the world and about how bad it is and how bad it's getting. And I thought I'm one of those people, I kind of try and tidy up and try and exercise control over things. And of course you can't. But I just felt that the only time I could exercise any control was when I put the bins out.
Bin Night.
I'm in charge here.
I'm in charge here. And the world may be falling to pieces. And my grandson may be crying his eyes out, but I'm going to put the bins out. And for those couple of minutes when I'm doing that, the world is okay.
Mark Ellen and I have often talked about this, about it's the foundation of a happy marriage or relationship is dealing with bin night.
It is.
Somebody's got to do it.
Got to know their position.
It's true. It's true.
Who does what and when.
Yeah.
It leads to a happy domestic life, we think.
I think so, but there's also a little solitude in it. And also the entropy, the eternal collapse of the universe around you is somehow stayed.
Yes.
few moments just while you do that.
Do something practical. That's right. That's true.
That's where I've been like in my attention.
So Midnight's on the new record, Sweet Illusions, and we were listening to it. We both thought it was a kind of romantic look back at. Maybe wrong. At Glasgow, the time was a bit where you talk about the Iron Bridge, which I assume must be Lynn Park Bridge, and then there's about the street lights humming, and it's just it's a bit like a sort of Edward Hopper painting of these slightly kind of goth characters loafing around on the street lights in Glasgow in the rain normally as well. I think
that's very kind of you. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's just really picking up where I left off 40 years ago. Really, I mean, it's really a kind of art student's kind of album. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of
a mature student.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that's exactly. Yeah, and it is because that time was so potent for me and so full of great characters and great settings. I mean, most of those northern cities with their kind of old Victorian buildings and tenements and their industrial aspects and their tower blocks are very, very evocative. And it's funny you mentioned Hopper because Glasgow's has been used quite a lot as New York, strangely, because it's built on a grid. And there are Terence Davis did a film there set in New York, and in fact I was in Brad Pitt made a film, World War Z, which was set in Philadelphia actually, but was shot in Glasgow. And which I ended up in that film. Doom. Yeah, that's another story. But yeah, it's a very powerful memories that I have of it, and I just wanted to evoke them again. But I guess work harder on the songwriting but it's done really for my own. It's for me. It's not I'm not trying to be a pop star. I'm not trying to change my career. It's just I've really become very compelled to make music in a very innocent kind of way, quite pure way. I had someone came because we did a gig quite recently because I thought, well, the next step is, can I take this on stage? Can I perform? And I'm very, very scared. I mean, we did it in November, just a small, and I just invited friends.
Where was that? Where did you do that?
In Glasgow, of course. And I did it at a little place called Stereo, which is, I looked around for a lot of venues and I found a venue that was very like the kind of venue I used to play, sticky floored.
Yeah. A
bar at the end, underneath the main concern. And didn't take too many people, and had a good vibe. I had lots of, ripped up rock and roll posters on the wall and stuff like that. And I was very scared, but I had put this great band together, and it seemed to work.
So you've not been tempted to do more of it?
Yeah, we are going to do more now, but the trouble is trying to do it without it turning into a thing.
Yeah,
a business. It's not for me. It's not that. If it's not fun, I don't want to do it. I don't want to. Someone said, "Oh, we can come. We'll do a tour and blah blah." I thought, well, then that's a whole different number. That's
work.
Yeah, I'm thinking of two other actors in particular who went back to making records: Keanu Reeves and Hugh Laurie, and they both got bands and did really formal big tours, didn't they?
Yeah.
You don't want to do it at that level.
Not really.
Fair enough.
Keanu, actually. Keanu was, I was in a film called Dangerous Liaisons, which Keanu was actually in. And we filmed in Paris. And this was before Keanu, this was one of his first roles. It's a film with John Malkovich and Glenn.
Yeah.
It's a great film. I'm saying, even though I'm in it, I'm not in it very much, but I think it's a wonderful film. And I was standing dressed in, it was all set, I was in a powdered wig and all the usual 18th century gear, and this taxi pulled up. And this guy got out of it, carrying his bags, this kind of surfer dude. Where are we going? I'm coming to do the film. Where's the film happening? I said, oh, I think it's over here. And this was Keanu. Keanu and I, we fell into conversation, and he said that he played the bass. And I said, well, I play guitar. And he hired a rehearsal room in Paris. And he's the only guy I've ever known who would just play the bass. He didn't, bass players, I was like, oh, they really want to play the guitar, or they really want to be the singer or something like that. He would just batter away at the band, which was great because you could just play the guitar over that all the time. So we did that a few times. And he's a lovely person. So, and I think that was before he was in a band or anything like that. So
I love the idea of the two of you being in kind of powdered wigs all day and then going off into a little rehearsal room and playing a dog star type kind of punk thrash.
It was really punk thrash, and also there was no drummer. It was just us.
An acquired taste, I would have thought.
Yeah. But it was delightful. He was great, and he's such a great person.
Right. So, is this something you're going to do again?
Yeah, we got some. In fact, we're doing the same venue, Stereo. We're doing a couple of dates there in July, and then we're doing the Belladrum Festival, which is a big festival up in the north of Scotland with Texas and Stereophonics. And
brilliant!
But we're just in a little stage off in the corner somewhere.
Right.
It's great fun, but I don't want it to become, No.
Have you ever thought of reforming the Dreamboys for a one-off? Craig Ferguson, would he be up for that?
I don't know. He might be. I don't know. He's a brilliant. I believe his wife. He had a fabulous drum kit which he left in when he moved to America. He left his drumming career behind. But I think as a surprise, his wife found his old drum kit and had it shipped over to Hollywood.
God,
I think. But he was a tremendous drummer. I mean, he was really, really great.
Well, look, with the way it's been fantastic. It's been really interesting.
Really enjoyable.
The way we normally finish these conversations is to ask people to tell us what's the best record ever made. Because we're embarked in an eternal quest to answer this question. And
we don't know the answer.
You may know the answer.
It could be an album, it could be a single, it could be just a track, any old thing.
Well, I think that given the revelations of our conversation, I would have to say that the best record ever made was the Song of the Siren.
Oh, right.
Is that just an apology to the Cocteau Twins for money's owed?
An apology to Elizabeth Fraser and to Robin Guthrie and the Cocteau Twins. I played Jean Cocteau as well, by the way.
Well, there you go.
Oh, there you go. It all links up. It was meant to be.
Who I assume is who the Cocteau Twins are named after.
I think so.
Unless they got it mixed, maybe they think it's Jacques Cousteau.
The Cocteau Twins.
I think that
very good.
Best song ever. I think that's really hard. The best record or best song?
Record.
Best record.
Transformer.
Okay.
We haven't had that one.
No, we haven't.
We haven't had that one.
That's good.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. I think that's an amazing record, and it's incredibly influential, but also incredibly of its time, and yet reaches through all of these decades and is full of all these, I don't know whether this was real or not, this kind of New York world that Lou Reed and David Bowie and Mick Ronson kind of created. I don't know whether any of it was true at all, whether it's a soundtrack for New York at that period, but it certainly was the absolute soundtrack of people having a go at trying to be a bit post-punky and glamourish in Glasgow.
Yeah, that fits totally with what you were saying about the dark side of that kind of gothic, urban Glaswegian art school life you were leading. I can see that perfectly.
It's quite fun as well. I mean, there are funny tracks on it.
Oh, yeah, there are.
And there are also songs, I mean, Satellite of Love is they're strange songs. That's what I find. They're sort of, they're kind of off the beaten track, haunting kind of things, but put together with a kind of Tin Pan Alley-esque kind of creativity, which I think is coming from Bowie and Ronson. There's a kind of almost kind of music hall element to it.
Well, also recorded in Wardour Street, which is the St. Anne's Court.
Yeah, and of course, Walk on the Wild Side is just fabulous.
It is the backing.
Another record like
the two basses, yeah.
Two basses, yeah.
Yeah.
Good name for a band.
Yeah. How lovely to talk to you. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, it's been great to thank you.
Thanks so much, Peter.
Well, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it very much, and I really enjoy the show. I've really been enjoying listening to it. So it's lovely to meet you guys, and thank you. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.